Our featured speaker today is the founder of Kansas City Oasis, which launched last April, and they have quickly grown into a vibrant, strong community and a great partner with our community, and beginning to form this kind of network of Oasis communities around the country. The latest news on our friends up there is that the Sunday edition of the Kansas City Star, their weekend edition, has a Sunday magazine just like the Chronicle does, and Kansas City Oasis is the front page story of this weekend's Kansas City Star Sunday magazine. And I believe it's been posted on our website already and our Facebook page and stuff, so please check it out. And we get a great mention in there. It's a very, very good article, which I think really accurately reflects what Oasis communities are trying to do. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome to Houston Oasis, the Executive Director of Kansas City Oasis, Helen Stringer. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Thanks for having me back. It is really awesome to be here. A lot of fun stuff going on at home, obviously. All right, so 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to a TEDx KC event, and an artist by the name of Phil Hansen was one of the speakers. His story that he shared was really incredible, and it has stuck with me ever since. There are lots of things you can learn about his life story, but what stuck with me was this theme of resilience that he had. So he, when he was in art school, he developed a shake in his hand, and he described this shake as the destruction of his dream of becoming an artist. Phil was a pointillism artist, so he made art with little tiny circles, and this shake turned those perfect little circles into something more like tadpoles. To compensate, he would hold the pen even tighter, which actually made the shake even worse. Discouraged, he left art school and considered quitting art altogether. But he found himself still so drawn to art that he went to a neurologist to see what was wrong and discovered that he in fact did have permanent nerve damage. The doctor looked at the squiggly line he had on the piece of paper he had just drawn and asked, why not just embrace the shake? So he did. He went home and began making scribble pictures, like this one. He realized he had to find a different approach to make the art that he wanted. He still enjoyed the fragmentalism of pointillism, but began looking for different ways to express that. Such as this artwork is Paul. It was painted completely by his feet. It is very large. All these pieces you're going to see are very, very, very big, so this doesn't really give a good scope. But this is totally done with his feet on plywood. So he discovered that if he worked on a larger scale with 2D materials, he could better embrace his shake. This next one, this is the zoom in part. So this looks like what you probably think it is. So this is the little pieces of gauze from the inside of a Band-Aid, and that is his blood. So he used those tiny little pieces to make this picture of Kim Jong-un called the value of blood. So that's all those little tiny pieces made up. The next one he had, this is all dandelion puffs. And he used those dandelion puffs to create this piece of art of Mother Teresa. So later, he had the idea of using other people's stories to create the content for his art. So for 6 days, he worked on this one and received stories from people around the world about events that had changed their life. Their stories literally became the art. You can see this a close-up of the boy's mouth. This one's called The Art of Philanthropy. So it represented over 78 countries, written in permanent marker, which he did over a live webcam feed. So there's the kind of larger scope picture of this particular one. He's done a lot of these. Another really cool thing that he's done, and you can watch a lot of these online. I didn't want to play a video. But he makes art that is not to be displayed, but rather to be destroyed. So he created this Jimi Hendrix piece of art. This is all matches, and then they lit it on fire, and now we have video, and that's all we have left of it. So he was faced with quitting a passion he had just because his body developed a shake. He took something that could have ended a passion and made it something possibly even more incredible and beautiful, something that now speaks to the human spirit and may actually be even more incredible and inspiring than if he had just done pointillism art. So what are we really talking about when we discuss resilience is stress resistance. Resilience refers to a person's ability to adapt successfully to acute stress, trauma, or more chronic adversity. A resilient individual has thus been tested by adversity and continues to demonstrate adaptive psychological and physiological stress responses. As a human species, we are really resilient people. We wouldn't be where we are today if we weren't. Now, even though we have a natural tendency to be resilient, have you ever wondered why some people seem to bounce back from adversity or trauma and others just don't? What is it about the way Phil Hansen dealt with his shake that other resilient people have in common? Now, I do want to note that in no way am I not acknowledging that real trauma and feelings of loss and despair that many circumstances in life cause us to feel. The pain and turmoil people feel due to extreme stress, loss is real and legitimately devastating. What I am hoping to do is just answer the question, what do resilient people have in common? The first one is realistic optimism. Dutch swimmer Martin van der Weijden early swimming career was halted by a diagnosis of leukemia. He once shared that he didn't see many realistic people in sports, and it was the same in the cancer ward. Just like with swimming, the cancer ward was full of people who felt that by thinking positive, they had the upper hand against cancer. But Martin felt that they were full of false hope. Although he recognized that his chances of survival were actually only about 30%, friends would tell him to not think about that and keep his mind on the positives. Martin would share, quote, "There was a big gap between my hope and their ideas of hope. For me, chemotherapy was hope. It was science." When you think of it this way, it's really weird to say that positive thinking helps you. Martin simply couldn't tell himself that everything was going to be okay. He felt strong that he must admit the reality of what was happening. Only then could he begin taking steps to truly deal with it. So what did he do? Well, he set small goals for himself, like get through the week alive, to get through the day with minimal pain, to get through the next round of chemotherapy, and to get through the stem cell transplant, which did eventually save his life. 3 years later, cancer-free, he slipped back into swimming. Now this time, he decided to use the same type of realistic, yet forward thinking that had gotten him through leukemia. He shared that he felt his odds of successfully returning to swimming were actually pretty small. He already knew that he wasn't the fastest swimmer, something he actually acknowledged before he was diagnosed with leukemia. He recognized that he was going to have to train even harder as before his illness, since he had this natural shortfall. So instead of setting out to win races, he simply set out to break his own personal records in very small competitions. But over the next 5 years, he qualified for some of the most elite competitions, eventually landing in the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. Knowing that he wasn't the strongest athlete, he swam at the back of the pack, avoiding the slipstream, and at the last moment pulled ahead, clinching the gold. Now, to outside observers, Martin's comeback seems amazing. However, Martin believed that he was not a hero. He simply survived a trauma. And as for getting cancer, in his mind, it had nothing to do with him winning the gold. However, the media made him a famous cancer survivor. He was quoted as saying, "Don't call me Lance Armstrong." This is before Lance Armstrong's big fall. But he took offense to the string of comments that world-famous cycler had made about positive thinking, survival, and victory. And I'm sure you're familiar with some of those. He was quoted, this is Lance Armstrong, as saying, "Without cancer, I would have never won the Tour de France." Martin calls these kinds of statements dangerous. So you may be wondering, aren't all these studies that support these notions of positive thinking? Doesn't Oprah support these notions of positive thinking? That would make everyone believe it, right? Kidding. In an article published in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine and Psychological Bulletin, they reported significant flaws in previous research studies, such as small sample sizes, a lack of clearly specified hypotheses, and inappropriate methods to analyze data and interpret results. So, in plain English, the conclusion that positive thinking affects survival was based on biased and flawed research. Now, to be fair, a lot of studies have flaws, almost all of them do. But when a great deal of research has methodological flaws, as this report shared, it's possible that positive thinking isn't as powerful as a lot of people think. Now, that's not to say that positive thinking is never helpful under any circumstances. Everyone knows that you can find the exception to any rule if you look hard enough. This study alluded to one more thing. So there may be inherent danger in elevating positive thinking to too powerful of a position, a danger Martin spent quite some time considering while battling cancer. So the supporters of positive thinking get to have it their way no matter what. If people succeed at work, thrive at life, survive illness, they can simply say, see, it was positive thinking that did it. But if people don't succeed, or don't thrive, or the really unfortunate ones don't survive at all, supporters of positive thinking can say, see, they didn't think positively enough. If they didn't, everything would have been fine or worse. They could conclude that it was their own doubts and negative thinking that caused their misfortune, which is tragic. Do you guys remember back, I don't know how many years ago, Stuart Smalley on SNL? He would turn himself to his mirror and say, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. See, we should have caught on really fast. If SNL caught the irony of this whole positive thinking thing, then we should have caught on earlier too. So conventional wisdom says that positive thinking after a tragedy leads to better outcomes. So when the bottom drops out, having a rosy attitude is better than thinking the worst, right? Yet, for more than a half a century, psychologists have debated this face value of the power of positive thinking. So those arguing for this perspective assert that positive thinking is nothing less than the antidote to threatening illness and the secret to achieving success in life. We can all thank mid-20th century Protestant preacher Norman Vincent Peale for this view in his book called The Power of Positive Thinking, which offered a doctrine gilded by an appealing promise that positive thinking can bring positive realities. This has been the jumping off point for thousands of self-help books and the secret to the fortune of many people. And I don't know if you know, but the self-help industry is the best-selling genre of all time, and they project that it will continue to be the best-selling genre.
Thus helping themselves.
Thus helping. 80% of people who buy self-help books are repeat buyers. So I don't know, and I will admit there are a few. I read some of them, but usually ones that are heavily based in neurology and science. There's a lot of happiness science that we're now getting to have, this actually comes out of some of that. So research shows that by telling you everything is going to be all right could undermine your ability to take action to make your situation better. People who pay attention to the positive at the expense of noticing the potential for negatives, who believe that everything is or will be fine despite their real risk, may not take appropriate action to protect themselves. Their lack in belief in their own susceptibility may actually be truly dangerous. So currently the most supported psychosocial influence on cancer survival rate happens to be something called supportive expressive therapy. And this is when therapists have patients who experience and express their thoughts and feelings no matter what they are. So not just the rosy, happy ones, kind of expressing whatever it is. So speaking frankly about really tough topics often makes them less scary. To avoid them would be simply denying the reality that one is facing. Now, what makes Martin's story of resilience special is his ability to stop thinking positively and start thinking realistically, to avoid the comforting fiction that everything is going to be all right, and instead to ask, what now? Looking straight in the face of your circumstances and accepting reality allows you to figure out what is within your realm of control that you can maybe exert some level of influence over. It propels you to action instead of wishful thinking. The artist I mentioned earlier, Hansen, realization must He realized that he must first become limited to become limitless, is one of his sayings. He embraced his shake, accepted the nerve damage, reframed his perspective, exerted personal control over his circumstances, and used his problem-solving skills to do something positive and more amazing than he may have done otherwise. So according to 2 decades of research, and on average, 50 to 80% of people who have lived through a trauma say they have grown in some way, even though they have suffered. Even in the midst of pain, they've opened up to and embraced new choices. This is an incredible testament to the power of human spirit. Trauma tends to close off certain choices in our lives, yet when we look at the situation with eyes fully open, we also see the potential for new possibilities. This is what I like to call realistic optimism. Forward-focused, yet realistic. So building one's choices on a firm understanding of reality reminds me of one of our values. So reality is known through reason. So not only are we a reality-based community, at least most of us, right? But we are forward-focused. We are a really, at Oasis, one of the things we hope to be is a positive, forward-focused community. We have the ability to literally be realistically optimistic here. The second thread that we see that's really common with resilient people is that they have really excellent social support systems. The power of having a healthy support system is really quite profound. It'll increase your longevity, and it's just as good for you to have a really strong community and social support network as it is if you quit smoking, as eating better, exercising more. What are all the things that doctors tell you to do? When you go to the doctor's office and they, ask you all the questions like, are you eating right? Are you working out? Are you sleeping? Well, we all need more of that. They don't ask you, how many friends do you have? How often do you go out and visit with others? Do you have at least 5 friends whom to call if you have a problem? Because those are the questions that really your doctor should probably be asking, because it can influence your health just as much as all those other things like eating right and sleeping. Who has time to sleep? So within the social support system, what matters is the emotional support. Emotional support is the actual buffer for the effects of trauma and other stress, and happens to be one of the predictors for post-traumatic growth, the tendency of some individuals to find benefits in the aftermath of tragedy. Breast cancer support groups are a good example of this. They can get together and literally talk about their loss. They experience loss of breasts, loss of hair, and even possibly loss of life. Talking about these challenging realities makes the stuff less scary. And also they get that shared experience. You get a sense of solidarity and knowing that you're not alone. Now, at Oasis, we get to occasionally experience something similar through our community moments. At Kansas City Oasis, our community has been incredibly vulnerable and frank about their mental health challenges. A couple months ago, a Kansas City Oasian by the name of Amanda Cower shared about her very deep struggle with depression. She didn't sugarcoat anything by opening up. She shared that she really sucks at killing herself. Now, with very careful humor, which somehow she managed to do, she shared how she struggled with depression, still does, and then also shared with us, how we can help people like her who experience these really dark times in life. I will admit, her community moment was probably the most gritty one we've ever had. But her courage and frank honesty is still something that has helped so many people in our community. Not only does it foster a sense of solidarity for challenges that our culture tend to like to brush under the rug or have shame over, but it brings to light that we are not alone in our struggles. Whatever they may be, that our friends inspire us to know that we can move forward to overcome life's inevitable crappy lemons that we get. Amanda actually just happened to give a follow-up community moment a couple weeks ago, and it was really incredible to hear her share that if it wasn't for her KC Oasis family, her recovery, wouldn't have been so successful. It's stories like Amanda's that seriously leave me speechless. We are capable what we are capable of doing with communities like Oasis is seriously profound. It goes so much further beyond this Sunday event. This is great, and it's necessary. But beyond that, we have so many opportunities to connect with other people, whether it's on the really fun, great times, whether volunteering and helping others, social events, or during those really crappy times in life that just happen to be inevitable. In November, I had the very unfortunate opportunity of doing my first memorial service for a Kansas City Oasian's child. On a very cold Thursday afternoon, around 1:30, a whole bunch of Kansas City Oasians stood with another family who was experiencing their own personal hell and was there to support them. Afterwards, we all headed down to this restaurant, and we filled this huge, long table, and it was kind of this oddly full circle moment. I mean, literally that day was by far one of the most difficult days in my entire life. I'm glad I could do it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. But to see the outpouring of support for this family who was experiencing something that none of us ever want to even fathom experiencing was really profound and incredibly beautiful. I know that the family who lost their child, I don't know, to say that there's any level of resilience, I don't even know how to word it in a sense, but I know that they felt the support of Oasis. The mother had told me that right after they left the hospital, and they were in that dark days of she just said it was really hard to believe that they were leaving the hospital without their child, and that the first thought she had was that she could reach out to Oasis. These are people who had never been a part of a church. So she said it was kind of an odd thing for that to be the immediate next thought that she had, because she wasn't used to necessarily having church life where you just know, I can lean on my church family. But she said that was her first thought, and so she did it. She said it was hard. She's one of these people who would rather probably try to just take it on, be strong, and do it all on her own. But getting to, if anything, with what we've done with Oasis, opportunities like that, this family, she even said, they wouldn't have had anything. They would have gone to the graveside, and they actually would have buried his ashes, and that would have been that. There would have been maybe their family, they were maybe 5 or 6 family members, and there were 20 plus of us Oasis people. And some of us, they didn't completely know this family very well. They know them even better now. But it's times like that where we can support each other. Life can just be kind of crappy sometimes. Sorry to be negative. Get the happy songs and then bring Helen up. But the reality is that that's part of life. And so we get to, social support is so much more than just having a good time together, and that's great and needed, and trust me, that's highly desirable. But, the inevitable things of life that help us to overcome and get over those things is because we need each other more than ever. Communities like Oasis help foster these 2 threads of resiliency that I've just shared with you. We are a community grounded in reason, hence fostering the opportunity for realistic optimism. We are a community providing multiple opportunities for social support. So this leads me to propose that it's possible that humanists, or people who feel at home at an Oasis, may be more resilient than other populations. I don't know, we'll see. So we have the potential to be resilient, but I think we really need Oasis to do that. Together, we can help each other resist the inevitable stressors of life. So as I prepared this, I figured most people thought, Resiliency, she's probably going to share some stories about, Steve Jobs. I can think of a whole lot of people who seem resilient. Or people I shared about Phil Hansen and his nerve damage, or Martin van der Weijden and his surviving cancer. But you know what? I started to think about it, and I realized that in a lot of ways, we are all super survivors in some fashion. We all have a story to tell of overcoming or fighting against life's inevitable stressors. The secret of super survivors is your secrets, which shouldn't be secret anymore. We need to hear each other's stories of overcoming, whether it's in conversation or during an Oasis community moment. Together, we can make each other more resilient. So I leave you with this today. Congratulations. I deem you all super survivors, empowered by reason and connected by compassion. Thanks.